I want to preface this video by saying that animation, especially indie animation, isn't a zero-sum game where you have to choose your fighter and hope everything else fails in obscurity. A high tide raises all ships, and if you like something more than I do, that's good, more power to you. That being said, in any properly written piece of media, there will be elements that aren't immediately apparent. This is true of everything, from Goodfellas to Bluey, from Joker 1 to Joker 2. But there are two questions to which the answer should always be pretty obvious. What's going on, and why should I care? Because if you don't know what's going on, you'll be confused, and that leads to a bad watching experience. And if you don't care, you'll be bored. And if you can't even think of a reason to care, you'll completely dissociate from whatever you're watching, and that also leads to a bad viewing experience. Now, the first question is simple. Literally, what are the characters physically being filmed or drawn doing? For example, in Star Trek, it's usually trekking through the stars. In Star Wars, it's usually warring through the stars. And in Stargate, it's usually gatekeeping, gaslighting, girl bossing through the stars, I guess. Easy enough to understand, right? So in the Amazing Digital Circus, what's going on? Well, it's already kind of tricky to answer, because you can only really talk about the plot through describing the mysterious nature of the setting. So what even is the Digital Circus? The first episode centers around finding and then subsequently failing to use an exit.
Oh no! Someone's venturing out into the void! They'll get totally spoiled!
So, at least we know that it isn't the real world. I mean, in the fiction of the text, but beyond that, we don't really know what it is. It could be a prison, a purgatory, therapy, some type of game, a dream.
This is a dream!
They could be there intentionally or by some nefarious means. And there's an unclear level of memory loss involved in being there. The main character does remember putting on a VR headset at some point.
I put on some weird headset.
But not her own name.
Nobody can remember their name once they enter the Digital Circus!
Whether that's an aspect of being inside the Digital Circus or something that happened outside the Digital Circus, we don't know.
What are stories but mystery boxes?
Now, some of the characters that were there before her had the mental wherewithal to name themselves something related to what they looked like. But other characters didn't, or couldn't, and they got assigned random ones from a slot machine. But the other characters that just have a random assortment of letters for a name don't have 5-letter names. See, this is the kind of stuff a badly written show forces you to focus on when there's no narrative or emotional content to keep you more engaged than counting letters would. Ultimately, does it matter that Pomni and Zubul have a different amount of letters in their name? No, but neither does any of this stuff I'm talking about. No, wait, I mean in the discussion of the fiction of the text. Remember that exit I mentioned a minute and 24 seconds ago? Well, by the second episode, the main character has completely moved on from that.
If it has to be my home.
So trying to escape isn't the answer to what's going on. The other characters are introduced as having long since given up on escaping.
Welcome to your new home.
So what the Digital Circus is doesn't really matter. It can't. Regardless of how the writers eventually decide to classify the circus, it wouldn't affect the scenes before that point, and certainly wouldn't justify writing a story about 6 characters with no agency or motivation whatsoever. That sentence there is probably going to be a sticking point for a lot of you, but I really want you to think about this. Flex your imagination. Try to rationalize it in your own mind. Take all those theories you no doubt have, because theories are all you can have regarding a show like this, and put them into practice. What would justify to you personally showing us all these scenes? And if you don't think they need further justification, leave a comment about why you hate storytelling so much. Their real lives are over, or at the very most, immaterial to their adventures in there. They aren't motivated to leave.
I'm originally from somewhere else.
They're not particularly stoked on staying.
Nobody likes your stupid adventures.
They've been there for years, apparently, and haven't done anything about Jax, and he tortures people.
That's literally my only fear. Why would you do this?
Now, I've talked to people who've compared the circus to a video game.
Cheaters never win. That's the real tutorial here.
But there's a huge difference between running over pedestrians in GTA and griefing your teammates in co-op. Their tolerance of Jax's cruelty is the smoking gun to their lack of agency.
Do it, or I'll tell Ragatha about the figurine thing.
They just apathetically exist. In fact, that's the answer to what's going on. They exist. In a world divorced from reality and therefore devoid of consequences and therefore the potential for meaningful growth.
Drown yourself in the digital lake!
If anything does change to introduce a goal, it won't retroactively justify these episodes, unless gaslighting other players into complacency is how you build up enough points to escape. And I'm not even convinced that would make it worth it. Man, I'm really trying to be more positive on this channel. I swear, I am working on videos for subjects that I think are good. and also more RWBY stuff. So whether you like this video or not, just subscribe. But anyway, back to the point. What about the second question? Why should I care?
Why?
Surely you can't entice 300 million, really 300 million children without something that's at least a little intellectually or emotionally stimulating, right? Right? There's a cinematic technique called the something effect. And in short, it says that if you play 2 clips back to back, people will correlate them emotionally. This guy wants to f that soup. With that in mind, let me synopsize something that happened in the second episode for you. We're introduced to a character called Gummy Goo, and in a wild twist of fate, it's an actual character introduction because he has a desire.
Do you think your mom's gonna pull through if we get all this back to the village?
And a motivation to see it achieved. He's not real. I mean, in the fiction of the text. I mean, he's a computer program.
What am I?
He's an NPC, as opposed to the real characters, who, big shock, never got character introductions because they lack desire and motivation. And in the middle of the episode, he has a very impactful emotional breakdown.
Where's Mom?
You have a mom?
Shouldn't she be here with everyone else?
And then Pomni invites him to go live in the circus and become a main character, and he agrees and is instantly killed. Here's where the Scooby Snack effect comes in. They immediately follow up Gummy Goo's death with a funeral for a character who, and I cannot stress this part enough, was never in the show at all. They also mute the dialogue during the eulogy, so you don't even get to hear the real characters reminisce or express their emotions regarding him. So the answer to why should I care is that you shouldn't. The show aggressively, belligerently prevents you from even trying to care about anything. Not the NPCs.
I'm gonna go drink water.
Not the dead characters.
How is Kaufmo doing?
Oh, he's doing great.
And certainly not the main ones. And who are these characters that the show berates you for trying to squeeze any sort of entertainment out of? Well, there's Cain, the titular deus
Sent to us by God.
from Deus Ex Machina. Pomni, a foul-mouthed clown with anxiety. Hey, wait a minute! Ragatha, who is nice occasionally. Jax, a sociopath. Gangle, whose personality is a joke about being one note, that's actually delivered in a funny way in the first episode.
They broke my comedy mask.
But unfortunately, they botched that execution by acting like this is normal.
Crybaby.
And this next part may just be my opinion, but I think the joke would have landed a little better if she was the only one-note character instead of everyone being embarrassingly shallow and her being the only one with a reason. But, you know, to each their own. Zooble, whose episode 3 dialogue I just copy-pasted into this part of the script.
Ragatha, nice. Jax, Gangle's shy. Kinger's insane. Pomni, traumatized.
This isn't actually me being overly harsh or anything, it's something the writers knew about and decided to leave in the show.
This is dumb and weird.
Well, you're still watching it.
Instead of writing something better. Or changing careers to something more in line with their creative abilities, like working retail. And on top of oh so helpfully it's intentionaling away all their bad writing, they also have dysphoria and dysmorphia.
I just want to find something that feels good.
Portrayed in the most bland, generic, inside-the-box thinking way imaginable. I know representation for this is very thin on the ground, but does anyone actually appreciate this uber remedial attempt at symbolism?
That problem is already solved.
Maybe you do, but from the outside looking in, it feels like a really bad stereotype. And also, isn't it messed up that in the midst of being vulnerable, they're manipulated into doing emotional labor for their torturer? Ironically, Zooble is the most active participant in the plot by virtue of not engaging with Cain's games.
I would prefer not.
You must.
But also, ironically, did two ironicallys cancel each other out like a double negative? Anyway, this confirms a lack of consequences for not participating, making the only demonstration of agency even more detrimental to this show's perception of having a plot than not having any would have been. It's a Skinner box. They wrote a Skinner box show to capitalize on your ingrained compulsion to value inconsistent reward schedules. They're aping society's general understanding of stuff like slot machines to expect some greater reward from engaging in a horrible, repetitive activity. Like, there are good shows out there with consistent, regular instances of deep, engaging content, but no, you're gonna chase that mystery, that chance that maybe if you're a good little rat and you push that button enough times, they'll eventually tell you what's going on and you'll get your answer, your little food pellet, and it'll all be worth it. Again, I'd like to reiterate that if you enjoy following vapid mysteries about hollow characters for the questionable reward of potentially finding out why, or you just like the character designs, that's awesome, and don't let me rain on your parade. And finally, Kinger, who's crazy. Right? The third episode is about, for lack of a better word, Kinger and his dubiously, if at all, established craziness. In the first episode, he calls a pillow fort impenetrable.
My impenetrable fortress!
And is startled by Gangle. Twice. The second time it happens is really funny.
Hello?
It has the same energy as this clip from Family Guy.
Oh my god! You can talk!
Maybe it's weird that he's not startled by anything else in the show?
I'm sorry. Could you speak up? I couldn't quite make that out.
But they harp on the fact that you can't die, so that's normal. In the second episode, he tries to save Pomni after Jax yeets her into traffic. I mean, he does end up screwing that one up and crashing their Mad Max car, but that's like having bad situational awareness, right?
Boy, we're not very good at this, are we?
Helping your friend?
I'll get it for you!
Yeah, sure, helping your friend. It's not crazy. Throwing someone into traffic is. Blaming the wrong person when you saw the guy who messed up is.
I blame you for this.
Calling someone who's been presented as being just as stable as anyone else in the cast crazy is.
That's why he's crazy.
Letting Dashi force me to watch this god-awful show is. Calling shotgun and getting in the driver's seat is. Anyway, in the third episode, Pomni says this.
Why have you been acting so different lately?
Completely unprompted, I might add. And that prompts him to spill some backstory about his dead wife, which, if I'm being honest, would be a pretty good reason to lose your mind. I mean, in addition to everyone's shared excuse for losing your mind of being trapped in a video game, or experimental prison sentence, or torturous therapy session, or hell.
We are literally in hell right now.
Or whatever it ends up being. Like I said a while ago, that wouldn't matter in the slightest. But I am LTHO.
It means in my less than humble opinion.
He wasn't written to be crazier than Jax, or Kane, or Pomni.
What time period is this supposed to be again?
You know, Ragatha's really chill considering what's going on, so like, you know, that girl ain't right in the head. Anyway, at the start of episode 3, they're doing some dumb shit so chumps can write about it in a wiki instead of realizing the show doesn't have any narrative content to form an emotional connection with, and in that, they say Kinger glows when he holds his breath.
Kinger starts glowing.
And in the climax, right after he says this,
Being surrounded by darkness always brings me back to a certain time.
he ends up holding his breath to save the day. And if the writers were correct about
You're just gonna go back to being crazy.
that, Kinger would have gone crazy while illuminated, so basically this is confirmation that I was right about everything and the show is trash. Oh my god, it's so bad, I hate it so much. People used to ask me, oh god, if you hate Ruby so much, why do you watch it? And I don't hate Ruby at all. Yeah, sure, it's bad, but it's bad in such a fun, engaging way that I love it. This show, Digital Circus, it's so vapid and hollow, and it makes me want to claw my f***ing eyes out. Anyway, subscribe, check out the Patreon, the next video will be positive, I swear.